O'Connor here, Federation of Irish Sports CEO. My video doesn't seem to want to work this morning, so apologies all. You're all very welcome to our first calQrisk webinar. We're delighted to have calQrisk on board with us. It's a management function for governance, risk and compliance. And as we all know, governance and compliance is on the tip of everybody's tongue. I know an awful lot of work has been done by you all. I won't keep you further. I just want to welcome both Jerry and Paul to today's webinar. And I think you're going to get an awful lot from this event today. So back to you, Paul, and thank you.
Great, Mary. Thank you very much for the introduction. And thank you all for joining us this morning. We've had a very interesting and fruitful conversations with the Federation, and I'd like to thank Mary personally for her commitment to getting us to this stage. And we really are looking forward to working with the Federation and all the NGBs and LSPs that are members of the Federation over the next months and years. I just put up this slide to give you an idea of what this is. So it's a world-class governance, risk and compliance software built specifically for sport. And the quotation here kind of sums it all up. Good governance needs to be lived. It's not something that is shelfware. It's not ticking boxes. It's about something that is lived by and through the organization. And that's the basis on which we've proceeded into this partnership on the understanding and belief that's what sport in Ireland and sport generally is looking for. Just to give you some background on the company, an agenda first, so an introduction as to who we are. We're going to look at what the compliance concerns are, where the principal concerns are. And then we look at the challenge that we discussed with the Federation and some of the NGBs and LSPs in the conversations we've had in the run into this partnership, and then the solution. What we're going to do with the solution here is take it to the high level of what it is, and then Jerry is going to go through a demonstration, a quick demonstration, a high level of the software itself. And then there's a question and answer session at the end. We would say that about 40 minutes in total from us, and then obviously leave it open for question and answers for the last 20 minutes. So if you've got questions, come in through the chat line and we'll deal with them at the end. A little bit about calQrisk. It's an Irish company based in Shannon, and we have offices in London, and we are risk compliance professionals. You can see the memberships of the organizations that we're involved in there, and all of our people have some qualification in risk or compliance. My colleague Jerry, who will join us for the demo, chairs the mirror committee of the ISO 31000 risk management standards on behalf of Ireland through the NSAI. And he also sits on the technical committee of that standard worldwide. We're passionate about risk, and some of the people we've met have said, oh God, they're too passionate about risk. We have tremendous belief in what we do and the benefit of what we do to the organizations we work with. The product, we started out the business developing a process to manage risk. When Jerry and I came together, that was a manual process. We designed, built, extended the process. And in the course of the conversations, we always had it in mind to see if we could put it into a software application. We started with a relatively small version. And when we showed it to clients, certainly in the early days, and even to some extent still, clients who see it, love it, and say, will it or could it? And our general answer to the question, will it or could it, has been, yes, it could. And so the client base has informed the development roadmap of the software over time. I've listed here some of the areas that we're in. Fundamental belief behind this software, fundamental principle is that particularly when you deal with compliance. Compliance is an outcome of good risk management. And when you look at regulators, and generally we deal with regulated entities that are concerned about being compliant with both regulation and legislation. So these regulators, the FCA, CBI, the consumer protection people, the GDPR, what they're looking for is a risk-based approach to compliance. And that's basically what we have here in a box. These are some of our clients. I'll give you an idea. I suppose one of the interesting ones here in terms of numbers of the 12 largest insurance brokers in the country, 10 of them are clients of ours. Over 50% of the credit unions in Ireland will be clients of ours. And it's, I suppose, the single biggest pride we have in our client base is our retention rate. Our retention rate is over 90%. And we work very closely with our clients over time. We still have clients from the first day that we launched the software. So very proud of that. And part of that is a result of the informed development. So we listen a lot. We listen to the sector, we listen to what's troubling the sector we're in, we listen to the concerns, and we attempt to address them. Or in many cases, what we do is we show people use cases within the software where they can solve whatever problem they're trying to describe. From a sport perspective, obviously compliance has become, there was a time when compliance was considered important, but not urgent. Compliance has become urgent. It's become urgent it's a societal issue. Generally across society, people are more concerned about how things are governed, how stuff is done within organizations. And when you have things like vetting, safeguarding, data protection, all of those things, they need to be well managed. And stakeholders need to be certain that controls are in place. And the stakeholders include here funders, sponsors, parents, the participants, people connected with the sport. They need to be certain. So certainty is one of the key issues that inform and drive the development and implementation of the software application. So when we talked a little bit about the design, so we began to talk with the Federation. We thought a very good starting point. And we looked for benefits across the entirety of sport. So from the Federation perspective, it is possible with the software to get input through a monitoring process from the national governing bodies, the LSPs, that will give relatively simply, I say relatively simply, simple matter of answering the questions maybe on a monthly, quarterly or annual basis. And once the questions are answered, the questions are designed in such a way that they give information succinctly. It's easy to give the information and you're not inviting too much commentary around the information. Sometimes you get overwhelmed with data, but the idea of this and the process that we use would be to get sufficient data to give you an attestation of the status. And the Federation would be able to do that. And as a result, better inform whatever influencing that they will do, can do, informed information from across Irish sport, strengthens their position and strengthens the position of Irish sport generally. At the national governing body level, the ability to centrally manage risk and compliance. A lot of the time, risk is done or compliance is done as a project. It's not a project, it's a continuous process. And one of the things that's demanded increasingly by regulators, we saw it particularly in the charities regulator space, is evidence, not just attestation, but evidence of the attestation. So if you say, yes, a control is in place, then there is also a requirement to be able to point to where you have evidence that says the control is in place and remains effective. And that combination of the attestation and the evidencing gives the NGB governors, supporters, that shareholder, stakeholder group confidence in the activity at the NGB level. And it doesn't matter what size the NGB is, the obligations are actually very close to the same. I know that we looked at the ABC, the scale of the particular governance, the sport governance regulation, and we appreciate that there's size difference in there, and the nature of the NGBs is different, and we've reflected that in the design and in the available product offering. So we'll talk a little bit about that later on. One of the issues that we were also asked to include in the process was clubs, because the clubs are an integral part of the sport, and they're also an integral part of the governance regime. And so through monitoring, the clubs are included in the process. And this conscious also with many of the volunteers, the people involved at club level are time poor. And so we've designed the system, we believe we've designed the system, first of all, to allow flexibility to the NGB to get the information that they would seek from the club, and also to make that so succinct that the activity at club level isn't interfered with. It's not a huge burden. And if it's done properly and quickly on a timely basis, the information transfer is basically, it's almost instant, and the reporting that can be generated by the NGB from the input from the clubs, we give them a picture across the country, across their network, very, very quickly. At the end of it, I talked a little bit about trust of stakeholders, both the internal and external stakeholders. So reporting obviously is a key part of the whole thing, and for stakeholders who want information, want data from the NGB about the status right across the organization, that's readily available through reporting, and basically in one single data depository. From that, you can pretty much answer any question that you are likely to be asked if you've gone through the process. We've done some trials with NGBs. We've had conversations with both NGBs and LSPs, and we've had conversations down at club level. And this gives you a summary of what happened. Basically, the ability to manage risk, compliance concerns in a central platform, they reckon it's huge. Now we talk about the compliance stuff here, but it's beyond compliance. So, for example, we actually have an NGB who is operating a system for all sorts. Their cybersecurity risks, their data protection risk, and their general operations risk. So depending on how deep you want to engage and embrace the software, that is an ability. So, and more than happy to talk to NGBs along those lines, that you may choose to enter a certain level for a certain purpose and then grow the thing out. You see what other issues it can satisfy. We pushed the questionnaires out to the clubs and got the answers back, and that works. We got feedback from a number of sources that said, yeah, this works. It's quick, it's slick, it's easy, it's intuitive. And at club level, that was great to hear. And then the reporting. We developed a number of reports as a result of the input we got, particularly from the clubs. They wanted to see the answers, was one of the key issues. And so the whole thing combined gives the opportunity for anything that's been identified as an issue. There's an opportunity for the organization to collectively work on preventive and corrective actions. Nobody's perfect. Regulators like to think that everybody has to be, should be, but the truth is nobody's perfect. And if you get honesty and answers, then you can go fix things. So in a no blame culture, that is the way to make progress. A quick overview of the software. Jerry's going to do a little bit more with this, but this gives you an idea of the modules that are in the software. So it's a fully featured governance, risk and compliance platform. It can operate the most complex, very large organization. Cork County Council, for example, are a client with an incredibly large and complex risk framework. It helps manage that. We have clients with up to 400 users, and it will comfortably manage that, or aspects of what the software does can be applicable to that. It's modular, and from an NGB perspective, you can license what you need. As I say, it is, won't call it pick and mix, but because it's modular and integrated, you can grow into it, if you like. It's intuitive and easy to use, and we've been told that by users, all of our user base. It's intuitive and easy to use, but the complexity lies under it. It doesn't turn up on the surface. And I suppose one of the things that is important these days, the organization owns the knowledge. So you're not looking at consultants coming in, doing certain things, bringing spreadsheets and taking the spreadsheets away from the finished. You own the knowledge. You always retain the knowledge. And one of the things when we talked to Mary and Federation is, and she insisted on it, and we bought into it very, very quickly, no organization is left behind. So from the largest to the smallest organization, we have an applicable solution, certainly on the compliance side, but we have a generally applicable solution on the governance, risk and compliance for every organization that is affiliated and associated with the Federation. So just to give us some idea, it's always a difficulty when you're dealing with big complex environments. What does it do? What are the benefits? Key benefits are here. It saves time and money. Sometimes people don't realize how much time, effort and money gets burned on this compliance stuff, on this risk management stuff. Believe me, if you've tried to group and put a couple of spreadsheets together and sent it out to a couple of people where they've altered the field width and they've done all that, this eliminates an awful lot of that. It gives you that central repository that I talked about. So you have one place to go. If you want to go the whole hog, you can look at incidents, you can look at complaints, you can look at your risks, you can look at everything in one place. And one of the big issues, I mentioned the charities regulator, but it allows the demonstration of compliance as and when required. You can push a button here. Jerry will talk later on and show you a report that we did for the charities. Push a button and basically the evidence is attached to the compliance statements, and any time a regulator calls. No panicking, no running around to figure out where's this, where's that. Push a button, it's all gathered together in one place, and you can with authority speak and demonstrate that compliance. From the club's perspective, some of the feedback is here. It significantly reduces the time needed for these kind of tasks, and it simplifies processes. The process of that gathering at club level, and it is basically question sets. So the feedback from the club is that it is a significant time reducer as well. This is the monitoring or the reaching out piece. And we put this in just to give you an idea of how you can use the system more or less for any purpose. You sit down and think about your network. You can reach your network through a monitoring or a series of monitoring questions, succinctly asked, and you can get out to your entire community and you can get feedback for pretty much anything. But we've already had conversations with a couple of NGBs, and they want the progress against their strategic plan objectives to be looked at across the organization. So you're asking about diversity, you're asking about participation, you can be asking about gender balance, all of those things that are important to sport. Through sport, you can ask those questions and get the feedback in, get a flavor for the pulse of your organization. How are we doing report? And there are so many. How are we doing reports? We've got a list of some of them here, but we're always wide open to a conversation. Will it conversation, or could it, or can I have this kind of report and that kind of report? There's a report writer built into it. Jerry will tell you about later. But I suppose the other key issue with the monitoring is that gathering of the knowledge base. It's into a central database and it's securely stored. It stays there. And your decisions, the decisions are based on well-structured, accessible data. If you're going to make a decision and you want that to be informed, you have easy access to the data that informs the decision and the direction of the decision. And you'll know what's working and what's not working. And look, it's over time stuff. So it will inform the second iteration of your planning. It will inform many adjustments you want to make on an annual basis. And then finally, that reaching out is a collaboration with the club network. And one of the things that people worry about when they begin to monitor at depth is they're afraid of the answers. Never be afraid of the answers. It's a no-blame culture. Your purpose here is to find and fix. What you're looking for is a heartbeat. Find and fix, find and fix. And sometimes it's a matter of just sharing good practice from one club to another. It's a find and fix, and the system allows you to do that. Reports. As I said, we were passionate about risk, passionate about compliance, and literally, you can build your own reports. You can assign viewing rights, for example. There's so many things you can do with the system. The dashboards make everything visible. And from a compliance and governance perspective, visibility is always a key. Issues that are managed, issues that are monitored, issues that are measured are always the thing to get the attention. And if you're asking the right questions, you will be managing the answers successfully. I'm going to hand it to Jerry. And again, to thank Mary and the Federation for this opportunity, and to thank you for joining us this morning. I'll be back when Jerry is done with the demo, but I will stay on in case he gets over passionate and move him along. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks. If you can stop sharing, Paul, and I'll share. Okay. Good morning, all. And don't want to scare you with another long PowerPoint presentation. So I've got 2 slides, and I'm going to start with the one that Paul showed briefly, stealing my thunder. Only joking. But it is scary if you see the full platform. What I wanted to show you is kind of the minimum platform, risks and monitoring. And for those of you, the larger organizations know that, as Paul said, you can grow and you can add task functionality, you can add incident functionality, record those incidents, the near misses, the breaches, the risk events, if you wish. Complaints, we added these over the years, over a period of 10 years as we sold to more and more customers. Requests that came in with GDPR, and audit for the internal audit function, or indeed external audit, complex audit function. And recently we just added a third-party module. So if you are outsourcing a lot of functions or services to third parties, we know in the financial services sector, the regulator is very keen that organizations better manage this. It makes sense. So it's another element of it. But you buy as much as you need, and if this is all you need, just the monitoring and the risks, then that's all you need to purchase. Dashboards and reporting tool are available for every installation, for every customer. Now, if I just want to show you the perspective, and this is the only other slide. This is what you see. If you're an NGB or LSP, it's the gathering of that information. And it's not just 2 or 3 clubs. If you have 50 clubs or 100 clubs, and if today you're sending out an Excel spreadsheet and getting 50 spreadsheets back or 100, and you have to collate all that information into one central place, my God, you probably have a lot of good Excel experts, but that's not good use of their time. So imagine the alternative, that you can send out, you can write a question once and send it to 100 people, get in 100 answers, and it's available in a report already. No copying, no pasting, nothing to do with the Excel at all. You can export it all to Excel if you wish at the end, but there's no copying and pasting. So it's all straight in to the central repository. And from that, you can, 1 minute later, start producing reports. So that's what I'm going to show you. For those of you who take the full risk module and want to go beyond compliance, compliance is bottom right here. On the governance code, we have risks in other areas as well, but I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm going to switch over to the to the application. Okay, so we're now in the application, and again, I would say to you, there is no software you need to install. This is, all you need is a browser and the internet, and I'm connected here to the internet, and the software is actually hosted in Amazon's data center in Dublin. So all you need is a browser, a username and login, and you're in. There's no, there's nothing you need to install on your PC. So you basically, you can be up and running, I would say within days, and certainly within hours for some people. In the system, on the left-hand side, you see I've enabled more than just the risks in the monitoring, but I'm going to focus today just on the risks in the monitoring. Now, we take a risk-based approach to compliance. So if you're a sporting organization, you need to comply with the governance code for sport. And that's broken down into 5 principles. And if I take each principle and the non-compliance with the principle as a risk, I'm just taking that risk-based approach, I drill into the risk. And there's my description. The consequence if I don't comply is probably reputational damage, could be also financial if I'm not getting the funding that I was hoping for. And at the lowest level is the questions. These are question sets that we have written that are based on, you'll see this one, the principle, there's 33 questions. And you can see through the I here, the I button, the reference, it's back to the governance code for sport and the section. So this is where it says you have to do this. You answer these questions, and as Paul said, it's a no blame culture, and it's really a comply or explain. So the first thing you want to understand is, well, how compliant are we, and do we have big gaps? So answer all the questions. And I think for a type C organization, the highest number of these that you have to answer is 182, I believe, and that's at the high end. So you answer all the questions, and in our system, if you say no to a question, it'll say, well, you should, the strategic plan should be reviewed at least once every 3 years. And you said, no, you don't do that. Well, you could, in the system, I won't go into tasks, but just very briefly, you could create a task and assign it to somebody to say, let's organize a review of the strategic plan. But back to the risk. Once you do an assessment of the risk, there are, as Paul said, lots of built-in reports. This is at a risk level. So I'm going to look at the risk report that tells me what controls we've in place, basically the things I've said yes to, and you can see that. So that's what's in place. But this is telling me those 4 things that could or should or must be in place. And then there's the task that we've created. So this is a view on that principle, that principle 1, and where we stand on it. Now, if you do this assessment at the beginning of the year and you don't check for another year, well, that's not risk management. Risk management is about checking maybe every month, every quarter. Are we doing the things we said on the 1st of January? We always do. And this is another view of it. You can link monitoring questions that you've written to the risk. So if you say you always review the CEO's report on progress, well, has the board reviewed a report from the CEO on progress in the past quarter? And if you ask this question every quarter, the answers will appear here. So you get an ongoing picture of the, if you like, the status or the level of that risk, and if you're getting the right answers. So that's from a risk point of view. If I go to monitoring, and if I assign questions to myself or to a club, I'm just going to show you what that looks like. I've answered 2, I just assigned 2, but this is one of 3 screens that the club would see. It's that simple, really. You assign the questions, you write them once, and you can assign it in one action. You can assign those 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 questions to 100 clubs, 200 clubs in one action. And when those individuals then log in, they'll see a list of the questions they have to answer. If you've assigned them 2, they'll see it like this. They click on a question. Here's the question. Here's the answer. And the answer can be like a yes/no question, or it can be a value. I'm going to show you an example in a moment. And they can add a comment, and indeed they can add a document for the evidence. And that's it. And they press save, or if they have a list, save and next. And until they're all answered, I just go filter back here to all answered. And it's as simple as that. You gather the information, and that's held in the central repository. Now, we've created a few custom reports, but maybe I'll show you the dashboard first. I'll show you the dashboard first. This is available to all customers. And the first thing I point out here is the compliance picture. And you can see that I'm 51% compliant at the moment. Now, there's a few we've said no to, some don't know, some not applicable. You can't hide them. Only the risk manager can make it not applicable, but maybe they are not applicable. Yeah, where the organization is a charity, well, we're not a charity, so we'll make that not applicable. But then there's a whole bunch you haven't answered, not addressed yet. The whole idea is answer them all, so you understand the size of the red piece, the ones where you've said no to. And here you'll see from that one we were looking at, the strategic plan should be reviewed at least once every 3 years. That pops up here as well. So if I've gone through those 5 risks, answered all the questions honestly, I've immediately got a gap analysis on my GCS type C. Now, if we're a type A or B organization, you get that view as well. They're slightly lower in numbers, I think 120 and 90. And NIST is cybersecurity. You can do the same with your information security if some of you are concerned about your readiness or your level of security. We have, I think there's, under the NIST framework, I like identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. I think there's 204 questions. Again, it's a gap analysis. It's like a self-assessment, answer them honestly, and you know where you stand. So that's the compliance. This is the risk view. And again, Paul said you can give people certain views into the software. Maybe it's a view only so that they can see the dashboard here, click on a risk and get that view of the risk that you saw when you're on the risk. Heat map view, these are, those of you who are familiar maybe with risk management will have come across the heat map before. It just shows you visually where the risks are and which ones maybe you should be worried about, like these ones in here, and you can drill down. This is about an information security policy. Okay, I want to show you about monitoring, and I'm going to go to particularly to the monitoring report, which shows this same widget as in here. But let's say you've sent out a bunch of questions and you want to see all answered questions to do with vetting, right? This is now digging into the repository, and I've sent out the questions to X clubs. I can see a list like that, a long list, and I can see readily the unacceptable answers that they come up in red. And when they were answered, and maybe if a comment was in place and who answered it. Now, obviously, if you've got 100 clubs, this becomes a very long report. So we have developed a few custom reports, and customers with the skills can develop their own custom reports as well. But to give you an idea, take that vetting, the same information, just shown in a different way. And this is where we feed into the governance. If I can, I'll expand that. Some of you might have small screens. There you go. If you think about it, the board don't want to see 20 pages of individual answers from all the clubs. Give me a summary report. And here's an idea of a summary report, let's say for vetting, with 3 vetting questions. I've asked, in this case, there's just 4 answers, but imagine if I have 24, it'll still fit in 1 page. And the color gives me an indication of, what's the level of compliance, if you like, across all of the clubs. You're looking for obviously all green. And that's, you see, once you have the answers in the system, the report is there. It's, select and click. If I want to monitor performance, I wrote a performance report here. Again, think at the NGB or LSP level. This was something that we developed with the customer. It's a template, but you can apply to any organization. So let's say you've got 6 objectives, and then under each objective, write in 4 measures that how are you going to measure progress with this objective. Now, I've not completely filled this in, but just give you an idea. So I said, measure 1, how many non-compliance events were there? And then you record that each month. You ask that question every month. How many were there this month? How many were there this month? And you say, well, I put in this, that 1 non-compliance we live with. We'd say that's okay, green. 2, now you're testing my patience, but 3 is totally unacceptable. And the color changes. Now imagine presenting this report to the board, and imagine you got 6 objectives and you got 4 measures in each. probably over less than 2 pages, you've got a visual of how compliant you are, how well, how much progress you're making. I mean, this objective is to maintain compliance. So I've got my full compliance picture here in a simple graphic, and I can see how it's progressing through the year. I can see it was getting gradually worse till April, and then we took some action, and by June we've got it under control again. These are the reports that today I think is costing organizations a lot of time, between gathering the information, then assembling that information such that you can do a report on it. And what our solution offers is gather it straight into a database and report from that database, have defined reports. Now, here's one we did for the charity sector, but to give you an example of what's possible. 62. This is where the risk information was gathered. The regulator, the charity regulator, you can see this is an 18-page report, published the format of this report and said it would like people to report on their compliance with the Charity Governance Code in this format. Principle 1, the core standards, be clear about the purpose of your charity. Right? This is all in the template of the report, but this information, this comes from those questions. If we ask a question, are trustees clear about the charity's purpose and can explain it in simple terms? And you said yes, then this will appear now. This was a no. This is why there's a red beside it. Now, for demo purposes, it was a green, and I put in the evidence, I put in the comment, and we just turned it back to a red. So we've 2 versions of this report, an internal and an external, and the internal shows all of the answers, the good and the bad and the ugly. And we even put in the same coloring as the regulators put in. The idea is you've got the picture, you've got the evidence, all in one report. And as Paul said, the idea here is that if you get a visit tomorrow, you can run that report at the touch of a button. You're not scrambling to assemble the Excel spreadsheets and pull the information together. You have that information. So I'm going to pause here now. That's probably one of the faster demos that I've done, but hopefully you've got a sense of what the system can do. I'll invite Paul maybe to turn on his video again and come back to us, and invite you, if you want to submit questions, on the chat. If you hover at the edge of the screen, you'll see a chat box, and click and just type your question in there. And maybe I'll ask Paul a question myself. Have I shown enough? And have I stopped before I got too passionate for you?
Yes, Jerry, we're on the timeline. We're one minute from the commission to the timeline, and I think I exceeded my time. So well done, and thank you very much. Passionate enough. I think anybody listening will understand the passion you have for the thing. One thing that I might just ask you to talk to is, some of the larger organizations particularly will have their own reporting systems. Do you want to talk about those, the opportunity to interface with some of those?
If I go back to just this slide here and the reporting tool, if you have an external reporting tool like Power BI from Microsoft, BI as in Business Intelligence, it can interface directly to that. So you can use our reporting tool, or if you have a preferred organizational reporting tool, you can do that. Now, Paul, I see there's a question about the cost in the chat, and I know you have another slide you want to share. So I'm going to stop sharing, and maybe you want to share that.
Yes. Okay. Well, what I'll do is, I'll go back to the slide deck, and I'll just finish it off, because we talked about, there's a couple of other bits. So let me go and finish the slide presentation through to the questions, and I'll deal with this question, the pricing question, on the way through. So have I got control of that? I do.
Good. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. So basically, just a little note on support and training. So we put down what would be typical? And again, it's like the pricing question. To some extent, it depends. We have in Ireland, as you know, some incredibly large, among the largest sporting organizations in the world, you know, incredibly large, deep organizations, with very, very complex governance structures and frameworks. So our design here, actually originally when we designed the product, we had GE in mind, because we wanted to make a product that was applicable at the highest level and applicable at the lowest operating level. And we succeeded in doing that. So really, it's applicable to any organization, but in the overall out of the box, typical average sense, the training level will be about 8 1-hour sessions. The training level for clubs, user training for clubs, is probably a 15-minute exercise. The thing is intuitive. So it looks very large when you look at it on Jerry's functional diagram, but the truth is each of the pieces has its own process, if you like, and the process is obvious from when you enter it. The other thing that we would do is build custom reports. So they'd probably be sector reports, but they could be specific if you want. And there are some organizations that will have their own capability internally, and we can facilitate that with some training on the report builder, and you can build your own reports. User support is by phone and email, and we have a help desk that's manned in normal business hours. One of the things that we're known for is our webinars. So we do regular, short, relevant webinars, and they would be sector relevant. So in sport, we would probably begin to put forward a series of maybe once a month or once every 6 weeks, relevant webinars to the sector. We have on the 30th of the month already a very, very heavily subscribed one on the 3 lines. Used to be 3 lines of defense, but basically on that management process. And that's open to, I think, pretty much all of our client base. We also have user groups. So we listen to the organization and update. So anytime the codes change, we burn the midnight oil, and as soon as it becomes a regulatory requirement or a legislative requirement, we'll have updated the relevant codes. And we are happy to share any knowledge we have, and sometimes introduce people to experts in subject matter experts in other in aspects of risk, and we're happy to have those conversations and introduce people. We say passionate about the process of risk management and spreading the processes and good practices in risk management. So, okay, how do we see this deploy? And so the solution options, we think the large NGBs will probably be interested in the full risk framework. And those modules include, from Jerry's functional diagram, the risk monitoring tasks, incidents, complaints, audit, which is around the 3 lines model. There is a full-blown audit tool into it. One of the things we didn't put on the graphic is we work with the aviation industry, and there they spend an awful lot of time auditing at MRO level and indeed at airline level. And the most recent addition is third parties. The CBI in particular and the ECB are very concerned about third-party management and the risks associated with third parties. So we've put that in. We think the large NGBs would be interested in that. And we're not defining what the large NGB is. I mean, that's probably your own definition, knowing how you're structured and organized. The medium-sized NGB, and again, we don't know well enough to decide where you fit here. Again, we're looking at the compliance framework, I think, out of the box, and the modules include risks, monitoring, tasks, and incidents. So closing the loop. And then for the smaller NGB, LSPs, the compliance framework, risks and monitoring is kind of where we see a starting point. But there is nothing to stop the smallest NGB choosing to go for the full system. After that, then you're looking at the clubs and club volume. So to answer the question, in our head, the small NGB in around 2,500 is the annual license. The next level up is about 5,500, and the top level, all singing, all dancing one, is somewhere between 8 and 10. But do bear in mind that for the very large organizations, we think they would probably have frameworks, risk frameworks and governance frameworks at provincial level and possibly even at county level. So just bear in mind that the footprint, as the footprint gets more complicated and the points at which you manage governance get more numerous, then obviously the cost will go up. But that'll give you an indication of where we think this is pitched. So I hope that answers the one question. Open it up for any more. Is there anybody out there?
Paul, if I could just come in there, I think it's fair to say as well that your contact details will be made available to all the members today. They might have individual questions, and I'm sure you'll be able to talk directly to them. As I'm talking there, I see another question after coming in, so I'll let you answer that. Thanks, Paul.
Okay.
Question is from, is the annual license for NGB, or do clubs also pay a fee?
Oh yeah, there would be a small fee for the club, either, and we've had this conversation with some, either through the probably ideally through the NGB, but you're looking at a small fee basically to set up. You need the user set up, and that was a small couple of €100 kind of fee for a club. And how the NGB organizes that, we would like the NGB to organize the contact and maintain the relationship, and the information goes out from the NGB back to the NGB. So yeah, there's a fee per club. Again, probably it's depends on volume. That's negotiable. It's cost to us, so we pass it on.
Paul, if I can come in there again, I see a question from Angela. She's asking, I can see that it will be very useful, but does Sport Ireland see a role to supply to NGBs to ensure compliance? From a Federation of Irish Sport point of view, we did make Sport Ireland aware of the new partnership and so on, but from our point of view, it's just an opportunity for our members to learn about calQrisk.
And I suppose we would have, over time, various contact with regulators, and often regulators will include us in the process of their guidelines, but it is more for information. They certainly, no regulator will endorse a commercial product, nor should they, from their own governance perspective, and we know that. But we would certainly be more than happy to have conversations with regulators, and sometimes we're invited in to comment on when the public processes begin. We will generally comment on those when they seek consultation with the sector, that kind of thing, that kind of feedback. And then Jerry, through his role in with the standard, the risk management standard, is called upon, both sometimes publicly, but generally privately, talking to some of the people who would be the most significant thinkers in the regulatory environment in Ireland. So yeah, I mean, Sport Ireland, we know their role, and if they make changes to the codes, then we will make changes. We will appropriately change the codes in the system and the question sets to reflect any changes. Not sure if they're going to go to evidencing like the charities regulator. I know that some of the NGBs have charity obligations as well, and they would be familiar with what the evidencing piece that the charities regulator went to. But if they do, and if they decide to whatever they want, then we will follow what their guidelines and their requirements are and reflect that in the content of the system.
There's another question. Are you in a position to offer a free trial? Yes, I suppose is the short answer. But trials, in my experience, need to be well managed, because we give a trial to people for 2 weeks, and after 13 days, you realise they haven't had time to trial it. Yes is the short answer. Certainly, we can manage a few. We can't manage a free trial with everybody, but happy to engage with the sector and manage that.
Well, one of the things we do early on in our process as we go into a sector is we will ask the early adopters if they will become reference clients, and that gives a comfort and an assurance, and that a bit of certainty around it, and we're not afraid to do that. So. And generally people who have embraced the software will have no problem being reference clients. That's been our experience. One of the things I suppose to remember is embrace the software. There is no point in buying it in the hope that you use it. Buy it to use it and have a plan about how it's going to be used. So we find that anybody who buys in, embraces it, it becomes lived.
Yeah.
There's a question here, is there any other comparable software in the market? Well, you know the answer I'm going to give you to that. Nothing compares. Oh, that's a song from somebody else, I think. To be honest, no. We've never come across software with an active knowledge base like this. We've seen a couple of people try to emulate it. We know that there are software applications out there that are brought by accountants, or they're brought by software developers. We bring two things: the active knowledge base, the commitment to maintain the active knowledge base for the sectors we go into, and I suppose the third issue is passion about the process of risk management, and that's stood us in good stead against most of the competition that's out there. There are systems out there that you can pay an awful lot of money for. We see them in the insurance industry, in the banking industry, and we just wonder about whether they're deployed, how they're active, and the other just amazed at some of the prices being charged for it. Is the fee annual or longer term? To be honest, it's an annual license fee, is how we structured it. But as I say, our retention rate is very high, and we tend to have customers and clients who stay with us for a very long time. So we would say annual license fee with the hope and the belief that the client would stay with us for. We have a client for, from the very outset, I think 11, 12 years from when we started the software.
I think, Paul, we probably could offer at the NGB level a license fee on a quarterly basis as well. Or is that something that we would consider?
Yeah, I mean, it's whatever, we get into the question: is the clubs, is the fee for clubs a once-off fee? No, it's not. It's an annual recurring. So basically, when you look at the monitoring the question sets, a couple of things about the club one that we are conscious of is that the individuals at the end of the question, the individuals receiving the questions may change. So we have, there's a piece of administration around that. And we just, when it's structured, when it's set up, we need to make sure that the question is directed to the person who is best suited to the answer. So it might be a safeguarding officer, we've got one set. It might be a compliance officer that gets the other. It might be the secretary, club secretary that gets somebody else. So, you know, there's complexity associated with the club deployment. So yeah, it's part of it's an annual license fee. I suppose, Jerry, to answer your question about quarterly and payment issues, we are open to discussion. So I suppose the best way to do it, look, we understand where you're at. We know that, I mean, this whole partnership has been delayed by COVID. We know that many of the organizations that are on here today and that we've spoken to have been hurting for almost 18 months. And we know the current position and condition. So look, talk to us. If you think this is something you want to engage with now, come and talk to us. And we will reach out to you individually anyway in the next week, 10 days. No more questions?
No, that's it, I think.
Mary, have you anything to finish?
Just going to say thank you very much to both Jerry and Paul for the presentation today. It is a great system. I think it'd be a real value to the sports sector in Ireland. And again, I would encourage all our members maybe to take what they've learned today away and consider it, and to talk to people, and obviously the opportunity to engage further with yourself and Jerry is there after today. And again, if anybody has any individual queries, they can contact me directly. But again, just say thanks to everybody for attending today.
Great, Mary, and
thank you.
I think as we conclude here, I think we've got a challenge. A number of challenges ahead of us in the deployment, but as I say, talk to us. But I would like to say from a personal perspective, for both, particularly for Terry and I, who've engaged with Mary, it's been an absolute pleasure. And I think the Federation is very well served by your tremendous leadership. And we really are looking forward to the fruits of this partnership. So thank you for the opportunity. And we look forward to working with you and with all of the members of the Federation over the next couple of years.
Thanks very much, Paul. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye now.